Welcome to my channel. Description of HTML example. It defines the document type or it instructs the browser about the version of HTML. This tag informs the browser that it is an HTML document. Text between HTML tag describes the web document. It is a container for all other elements of HTML except, it should be the first element inside the element, which contains the metadata information about the document. It must be closed before the body tag opens. To save your page in Sublime Text, press Ctrl+S or go to File option Save. To save a file, use extension .htm or HTML. We recommend to save the file first then write the code because after saving the page Sublime Text Editor will give you suggestions to write code. Write code in text editor and open HTML page in your browser. Building blocks of HTML. An HTML document consist of its basic building blocks which are 1. Tags. An HTML tag surrounds the content and apply meaning to it. It is written between brackets. Point 2. Attribute. An attribute in HTML provides extra information about the element, and it is applied within the start tag. An HTML attribute contains two fields, name and value, elements. An HTML element is an individual component of an HTML file. In an HTML file, everything written within tags are termed as HTML elements. HTML tags are like keywords which defines that how web browser will format and display the content. With the help of tags, a web browser can distinguish between an HTML content and a simple content. HTML tags contain three main parts: opening tag, content and closing tag. But some HTML tags are unclosed tags. When a web browser reads an HTML document, browser reads it from top to bottom and left to right. HTML tags are used to create HTML documents and render their properties. Each HTML tags have different properties. An HTML file must have some essential tags so that web browser can differentiate between a simple text and HTML text. You can use as many tags you want as per your code requirement. All HTML tags must enclosed within these brackets. Every tag in HTML perform different tasks. If you have used an open tag, then you must use a closed tag, except some tags. HTML attribute. HTML attributes are special words which provide additional information about the elements or attributes are the modifier of the HTML element. Each element or tag can have attributes, which defines the behavior of that element. Attributes should always be applied with start tag. The attribute should always be applied with its name and value pair. The attribute's name and values are case sensitive, and it is recommended by W3C that it should be written in lowercase only. You can add multiple attributes in one HTML element, but need to give space between two attributes. Tags that interact with text. The P tag. This tag defines a paragraph of text. It's a block element. Inside it, we can add any inline element we like span or a. We cannot add block elements. We cannot nest a P element into another one. By default, browsers style a paragraph with a margin on top and at the bottom. 16px in Chrome, but the exact value might vary between browsers. This causes two consecutive paragraphs to be spaced, replicating what we think of a paragraph in printed text. The span tag. This is an inline tag that can be used to create a section in a paragraph that can be targeted using CSS. The BR tag. This tag represents a line break. It's an inline element, and does not need a closing tag. We use it to create a new line inside a P tag, without creating a new paragraph, and compared to creating a new paragraph, it does not add additional spacing. The heading tags. HTML provides us 6 heading tags. From most important to least important, we have H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6. Typically a page will have one H1 element, which is the page title. Then you might have one or more H2 elements depending on the page content. Headings, especially the heading organization, are also essential for SEO, and search engines use them in various ways. The browser by default will render the H1 tag bigger, and will make the element's size smaller as the number near H increases. All headings are block elements. They cannot contain other elements, just text. The strong tag. This tag is used to mark the text inside it as strong. This is pretty important. It's not a visual hint, but a semantic hint. Depending on the medium used, its interpretation will vary. Browsers by default make the text in this tag bold. The M tag. This tag is used to mark the text inside it as emphasized. Like with strong, it's not a visual hint but a semantic hint. Browsers by default make the text in this italic quotes. The blockquote HTML tag is useful to insert citations in the text. Browsers by default apply a margin to the blockquote element. Chrome applies a 40px left and right margin, and a 10px top and bottom margin. The QHTML tag is used for inline quotes, horizontal line not really based on text, but the hour tag is often used inside a page. It means horizontal rule, and it adds a horizontal line in the page, useful to separate sections in the page. Lists. We have three types of lists: unordered lists, ordered lists, definition lists. Unordered lists are created using the ul tag. Each item in the list is created with the li tag. Ordered lists are similar, just made with the ol tag. Links are defined using the a tag. The link destination is set via href attribute. Between the starting and closing tag we have the link text. The above example is an absolute URL. Links also work with relative URLs. Be careful with the character. If omitted, instead of starting from the origin, the browser will just add the test string to the current URL. Link tags can include other things inside them, not just text. For example, images, or any other elements, except other tags. If you want to open the link in a new tab, you can use the target attribute. Container tags and page structure. HTML container tags. HTML provides a set of container tags. Those tags can contain an unspecified set of other tags. We have article section devant. It can be confusing to understand the difference between them. Let's see when to use each one of them. Article. The article tag identifies a thing that can be independent from other things in a page. For example, a list of blog posts in the homepage, or a list of links. We're not limited to lists. An article can be the main element in a page. Inside an article tag we should have a title h1 h6, and section represents a section of a document. Each section has a heading tag h1 h6, then the section body. It's useful to break a long article into different sections. Shouldn't be used as a generic container element. Div is made for this. Divdif is the generic container element. You often add a class or id attribute to this element to allow it to be styled using CSS. We use div in any place where we need a container but the existing tags are not suited. Tags related to pageNav. This tag is used to create the markup that defines the page navigation. Into this we typically add an ul or ol list. Aside. The aside tag is used to add a piece of content that is related to the main content, a box where to add a quote, for example. Or a sidebar. Using aside is a signal that the things it contains are not part of the regular flow of the section it lives into. Header. The header tag represents a part of the page that is the introduction. It can, for example, contain one or more heading tag h1 h6, the tagline for the article, an image. Main. The main tag represents the main part of a page. Footer. The footer tag is used to determine the footer of an article, or the footer of the page. Forms. Forms are the way you can interact with a page, or an app, built with web technologies. You have a set of controls, and when you submit the form, either with a click to a submit button or programmatically, the browser will send the data to the server. By default this data sending causes the page to reload after the data isn't, but using JavaScript you can alter this behavior. Not going to explain how in this book. A form is created using the form tag. By default forms are submitted using the getHTTP method. Which is its drawbacks, and usually you want to use post. You can set the form to use post when submitted by using the method attribute. The form is submitted, either using get or post, to the same URL where it resides. You need something server-side to handle the request, and typically you listen for those form submit events on a dedicated URL. You can specify the URL via the action parameter. This will cause the browser to submit the form data using post to the new contact URL on the same origin. If the origin protocol plus domain plus port is https://flaviocopes.com. Port 80 is the default. This means the form data will be sent to https://flaviocopes.com/new-contact. I talked about data. Which data? Data is provided by users via the set of controls that are available on the web platform. Input boxes, single-line text, text areas, multi-line text, select boxes, choose one option from a drop-down menu, radio buttons, choose one option from a list always visible, checkboxes, choose 0, one or more option, file uploads and more. Let's introduce each one of them in the following form fields overview. The input tag. The input field is one of the most widely used form elements. It's also a very versatile element, and it can completely change behavior based on the type attribute. The default behavior is to be a single-line text input control, equivalent to using type text. As with all the other fields that follow, you need to give the field a name in order for its content to be sent to the server when the form is submitted. The placeholder attribute is used to have some text showing up, in light gray, when the field is empty. Useful to add a hint to the user for what to type in email using type equals email will validate client-side in the browser, an email for correctness, semantic correctness, not ensuring the email addresses existing before submitting. Using type equals password will make every key entered appear as an asterisk, or dot, useful for fields that host a password. Numbers, you can have an input element accept only numbers. You can specify a minimum and maximum value accepted. The step attribute helps identify the steps between different values. For example, this accepts a value between 10 and 50, at steps of 5. Hidden fields can be hidden from the user. They will still be sent to the server. Open the form submit. This is commonly used to store values like a CSRF token, used for security and user identification, or even to detect robots sending spam. Using special techniques, it can also just be used to identify a form and its action, setting a default value all those fields except a predefined value. If the user does not change it, this will be the value sent to the server. If you set a placeholder, that value will appear if the user clears the input field value. Form submit. The type equals submit field is a button that, once pressed by the user, submits the form. The value attribute sets the text on the button, which if missing shows that submit text. Form validation. Browsers provide client-side validation functionality to forms. You can set fields as required, ensuring they are filled, and enforce a specific format for the input of each field. Let's see both options. Set fields as required. The required attribute helps you with validation. If the field is not set, client-side validation fails and the browser does not submit the form. Enforce a specific format. I described the type equals email field above. It automatically validates the email address according to a format set in the specification. In the type equals number field, I mentioned the min and max attribute to limit values entered to an interval. You can do more. You can enforce a specific format on any field. The pattern attribute gives you the ability to set a regular expression to validate the value against other fields. File uploads. You can load files from your local computer and send them to the server using a type equals file input element. You can attach multiple files. You can specify one or more file types allowed using the accept attribute. This accepts images. You can use a specific MIME type, like application, JSON, or set a file extension like .pdf. Or set multiple file extensions, like this. Buttons. The type equals button input fields can be used to add additional buttons to the form, that are not submit buttons. They are used to programmatically do something. Using JavaScript, there is a special field rendered as a button, whose special action is to clear the entire form and bring back the state of the fields to the initial one. Radio buttons. Radio buttons are used to create a set of choices, of which one is pressed and all the others are disabled. The name comes from old car radios that had this kind of interface. You define a set of type equals radio inputs, all with the same name attribute, and different value attribute. Once the form is submitted, the color data property will have one single value. There's always one element checked. The first item is the one checked by default. You can set the value that's pre-selected using the checked attribute. You can use it only once per radio inputs group. Checkboxes similar to radio boxes, but they allow multiple values to be chosen, or none at all. You define a set of type equals checkbox inputs, all with the same name attribute, and different value attribute. All those checkboxes will be unchecked by default. Use the checked attribute to enable them on page load. Since this input field allows multiple values, upon form submit the values will be sent to the server as an array. Date and time. We have a few input types to accept date values. The type equals date input field allows the user to enter a date, and shows a date picker if needed. The type equals time input field allows the user to enter a time, and shows a time picker if needed. The type equals month input field allows the user to enter a month and a year. The type equals week input field allows the user to enter a week and a year. All those fields allow to limit the range and the step between each value. I recommend checking MDN for the little details on their usage. The type equals datetime local field lets you choose a date and a time. Color picker, you can let users pick a color using the type equals color element. You set a default value using the value attribute. The browser will take care of showing a color picker to the user. Range, this input element shows a slider element. People can use it to move from a starting value to an ending value. You can provide an optional step. Telephone, the type equals telephone input field is used to enter a phone number. The main selling point for using telephone over text is on mobile, where the device can choose to show a numeric keyboard. Specify a pattern attribute for additional validation. URL, the type equals URL field is used to enter a URL. You can validate it using the pattern attribute. The text area tag, the text area element allows users to enter multi-line text. Compared to input, it requires an ending tag. You can set the dimensions using CSS, but also using the rows and calls attributes. As with the other form tags, the name attribute determines the naming the data sent to the server. Tables, in the early days of the web, tables were a very important part of building layouts. Later on they were replaced by CSS and its layout capabilities, and today we have powerful tools like CSS Flexbox and CSS Grid to build layouts. Tables are now used just for, guess what, building tables. The table tag, you define a table using the table tag. Inside the table we'll define the data. We reason in terms of rows, which means we add rows into a table, not columns. We'll define columns inside a row. Rows, a row is added using the tr tag, and that's the only thing we can add into a table element. This is a table with 3 rows. The first row can take the role of the header. Column headers, the table header contains the name of a column, typically in a bold font. Think about an Excel, Google Sheets document. The top ABCD header, we define the header using the th tag. The table content, the content of the table is defined using td tags inside the other tr elements. This is how browsers render it. If you don't add any CSS styling, a row can decide to span over 2 or more columns using the call span attribute, or it can span over 2 or more rows using the row span attribute. Row headings, before I explained how you can have column headings using the tag inside the first tr tag of the table. You can add a th tag as the first element inside a tr that's not the first tr of the table. To have row headings, more tags to organize the table, you can add 3 more tags into a table to have it more organized. This is best when using big tables. And to properly define a header and a footer too, those tags are body foot. They wrap the tr tags to clearly define the different sections of the table. Here's an example: multimedia tags, audio and video. In this section I want to show you the audio and video tags. The audio tag, this tag allows you to embed audio content in your HTML pages. This element can stream audio, maybe using a microphone via user media, or it can play an audio source which you reference using the src attribute. By default the browser does not show any controls for this element, which means the audio will play only if set to autoplay. More on this later, and the user can't see how to stop it or control the volume or move through the track. To show the built-in controls, you can add the controls attribute. Controls can have a custom skin. You can specify the MIME type of the audio file using the type attribute. If not set, the browser will try to automatically determine it. An audio file by default does not play automatically. Add the autoplay attribute to play the audio automatically. The loop attribute restarts the audio playing at 0 if set. Otherwise, if not present, the audio stops at the end of the file. Using JavaScript you can listen for various events happening on an audio element, the most basic of which are play when the file starts playing, pause when the audio playing was paused, playing when the audio is resumed from a pause, ended when the end of the audio file was reached. The video tag, this tag allows you to embed video content in your HTML pages. This element can stream video using a webcam via Get User Media or WebRTC, or it can play a video source which you reference using the src attribute. By default the browser does not show any controls for this element, just the video, which means the video will play only if set to autoplay. More on this later, and the user can't see how to stop it, pause it, control the volume or skip to a specific position in the video. To show the built-in controls, you can add the controls attribute. Controls can have a custom skin. You can specify the MIME type of the video file using the type attribute. If not set, the browser will try to automatically determine it. A video file by default does not play automatically. Add the autoplay attribute to play the video automatically. Some browsers also require the muted attribute to autoplay. The video autoplays only if muted. The loop attribute restarts the video playing at 0 if set, otherwise, if not present, the video stops at the end of the file. You can set an image to be the poster image. If not present, the browser will display the first frame of the video as soon as it's available. You can set the width and height attributes to set the space that element will take so that the browser can account for it and it does not change the layout when it's finally loaded. It takes a numeric value, expressed in pixels. Using JavaScript you can listen for various events happening on an video element, the most basic of which are, play when the file starts playing, pause when the video was paused, playing when the video is resumed from a pause, ended when the end of the video file was reached. Images can be displayed using the img tag. This tag accepts a src attribute, which we use to set the image source. We can use a wide set of images. The most common ones are PNG, JPEG, GIF, SVG and more recently WebP. The HTML standard requires an alt attribute to be present to describe the image. This is used by screen readers and also by search engine bots. You can set the width and height attributes to set the space that element will take, so that the browser can account for it and it does not change the layout when it's fully loaded. It takes a numeric value, expressed in pixels. The figure tag. The figure tag is often used along with the img tag. Figure is a semantic tag often used when you want to display an image with a caption. You use it like this.